Start your morning with insights and drive. It's the business sit down where ideas come alive. From boardrooms to breakthroughs, we cover it all. Of FS Business School, standing tall. Sit down, tune in, let the wisdom flow. Real talk, big moves, and the knowledge to grow. On your way to work, we're paving the way. The business sit down will set a blaze.
In this episode, we delve into the world of talent management with Prof Nicolene Barkhuizen, an expert in human resource management, talent management, and work wellness. We explore why management talent effectively is crucial for a company's success, and how addressing poor performance while rewarding top talent can lead to a thriving workplace. Prof Barkhuizen shares insights into the strategies that companies can use to identify, nurture, and retain high-performing employees. Whether you're a leader, HR professional, or just interested in creating a positive work culture, this conversation will offer valuable tips and a fresh perspective on management talent in today's fast-paced business world.
Prof, thank you very much for joining us today. It's always an honor to have the school director sit with us, especially with a project like this. Prof, the main focus of today's conversation is focused on talent management. And my first question would be, why is talent management such a critical component in any organization's success?
Thank you very much for that question, Philip. I think the word talent says itself. If you think in terms of talent in the workplace, these are the individuals that's really taking organizations to the next level. But we also need to be careful not typecasting talent too much. You've got different levels of talent within organizations, and you need to position them strategically so that they can contribute in the end of the day to the organization's objectives. However, having said that, you must also align talent objectives with that of the organization. Otherwise, of course, you will not meet what you want out of them.
How can companies, if you think of talent, you think immediately of high-performing and low-performing staff, but let's say a company's got a high-potential employee, and how can they nurture that person?
Thank you for that question also, Philip. So what is critically important, and like I said, you've got different levels of talent. So yes, you can have a high potential person or a high performer, but sustaining that is very important. So what I always say is, and this is where talent pool development comes in. For example, is that assessing this person where they are in terms of their current skill sets and their talent intelligences and their contribution to the organization. And then from there, for example, plot them in terms of where to next for their careers. And the mistake that we tend to make is that we think people can only be promoted vertically and not horizontally. So we want to put them, for example, into leadership positions, which we are not always ready for. And that we tend to confuse with high-performing individuals. So we should also start looking at more horizontal types of promotion pathways within organizations where talent, for example, can go into specialist positions. But what people also need to realize is that talent management is an everyday function. You don't just leave a talented person. You have frequent conversations, you've got frequent interactions, you do frequent planning, because in the end of the day, if you optimize them in the workplace, of course the results will also show for you in the organization.
Now, the next thing I've always wondered was talent management in the private sector versus talent management in the public sector. Is there a difference, or would talent management principles that you would do in the private sector easily migrate over into the public sector?
That is a critical question, Philip. We have done a lot of research in both the public and private sector on talent, and we've also done a lot of work in both industries. So the first thing that we tend to forget is that context matters. So for example, the context within the public sector, for example, will differ from the context also in the private sector. And that is also because of different types of legislative frameworks and so on, and also utilization people within those contexts. So I would say, for example, is that there are certain basic skills that talented individuals should have in any type of organizations. I, for example, develop a talent intelligence model, and also, for example, redefine talent that can be applied in both public and also private sector institutions. So these are the bare minimum that talented individuals should have. And then from there, you really need to be aware, like in terms of what you're going to do next with that talented person. For example, what are the typical career pathways for that individual within the public and also private sector institution? And another thing also that we need to realize is that there's no such thing such as long-term employment anymore. I mean, we've got now the talent currency, you've got the talent stock exchange. So you actually sell your skills to the highest bidder. And the question arguably is that which of these type institutions are the most ready and mature to embrace talent? In our research and practice work that we've done, we found fantastic public sector institutions embracing talent, but also those, for example, who did not, look after talented people, and the turnover was very high. But likewise, you will also get it, for example, in the private sector. So I think what is critically important, and also from a leadership perspective, is having the right talent mindset, understanding your context, understanding what you need to achieve in that specific context, and then position your people optimally so that they can achieve in that context.
Now, the past conversation so far, we've only spoken about the guys that's, as they would say, bringing the bacon home. But let's say you've got a underperformer, you've got someone that isn't bringing or not doing what they need to do. What is the risk of not addressing poor performance in a timely manner?
Yes, that is quite problematic, but also organizations sometimes need to look at their performance management systems also. And what we've been doing is that we've done a lot of work now in terms of developing modern performance management systems within the talent management space. Because, like I said, talent management is after the fact process that happens. So I think we also need to be careful when we talk about underperforming. And what is the reason for that? And that, I would say, is the first thing, because you would, for example, had somebody who was an absolute top performer, but they got so demoralized, maybe because of the work environment, that they are not high performers anymore. So how can you bring back, that meaningfulness and that purpose within that person to ensure that they perform again? On the other hand, also is that like looking at a poor performing person, is that you need to be very careful in terms of legislative frameworks how you're going to deal with that specific individual. Maybe it's a complete job person mismatch, and that's why I said about your talent pool development, where, for example, can you then channel that person, for example, for a more adequate job within a specific organization. Unfortunately, if that doesn't help, then you have to do the rules that are prescribed by your labor relations act. But that, for me, is really the very, very last resort, because we are really living in a people-centric era. Although AI is much at the front, but still your success will be determined by people centricity. And I just feel, let's see what interventions can we do to assist that person. And if it really doesn't help them, that's really, for me, the legislation is the very last resort.
Now, the other thing most companies look at is cost. What does it cost me? So sometimes most companies would say we can't give someone an incentive due to cost implications. What's some strategies that a company can use to have an employee feel motivated and feel valued?
Yeah. I think what we have to start doing is that look at a new type of employee in this day and age. Yes, having an adequate and market-related salary is critically important if we look at the cost of living going up, but you also need to consider the total rewards and strategies. For example, people like flexible work hours. I'm quite sure people have heard about the right to disconnect. I mean, who of us really wants to sit 12 o'clock in the evening getting emails and SMSs and so on? That system automatically deletes, for example, those type of messages after you leave your job. So those flexibility is critically important. People want work-life balance. And then also small, awards, for example, vouchers and those type of things. One can think it's really insignificant, but people do appreciate that. But one thing that I've learned is that really stood out is the word thank you. I mean, it doesn't cost any money whatsoever. And as many times leaders forget to say just thank you, for walking an extra mile. Thank you for a job well done. The mere word thank you is psychologically so strong, and that would also motivate people.
Now, the next question I want to, we spoke about work-life balance. Prof, do you think when you look at talent management and you consider work-life balance, that talent management, for example, for a male worker versus a female worker may differ? Or would talent management be a broad sense in work-life balance, whether it be male or female?
It depends on the responsibilities. Remember, Philip, the society has changed so much. So we have the assumption, for example, like that, yes, in the majority of cases, mothers are still taking care of children. But likewise, fathers are also these days taking care of children. So we're living in a society where you cannot really afford for one parent to have a job and the other parent not. So what I would suggest is, look at the context. I really want to move away from stereotyping and so on. So what work-life balance for the one, should also be applicable, for example, for the other party. But again, I think the unique circumstances needs to be taken into consideration. Otherwise, if we're going to maybe favor the one, it might also lead, for example, to discrimination. But like I said, is that there are so many wonderful modern movements now, in terms of talent management practices. So these things really can easily be done in the workplace.
When normally, as I've seen some of the other interviews we've got, it normally comes back to management leadership. Now, Prof, in your expertise, what impact or what role does leadership play in cultivating a culture that focuses on talent management and supports talent management?
Leadership is everything. I'm going to be very honest with you, Philip, and all the work that we've been doing and being myself also in many leadership roles is that you need to be able, to know what you are doing. First and foremost, and I call it talent for talent. So it's really important, as a leader, you need to have the ability really to take people, and lead them towards where you envisage them and where they need to be going and contributing. So it all starts with a talent mindset. For example, having the conviction that the person is worth investing in and actually have value for the organization. And whenever I talk about talent, I talk about the different multidisciplinary perspectives. For example, one perspective would say, that's a person worth their money, show me the money. So they don't really care about the person. For example, another one, for example, would say, what was my return on investment? For looking after you. And others would, for example, say it's about personality. So, but when you look at talent, you really need to have an integrated approach. And as a leader, I need to take cognizance of that. And whatever practices and so on I develop, I really need to cascade that so that people can function optimally. Also critically important, and it's now a big drive, for example, in the USA because of the quiet quitting and the quiet firing movements, is that psychologically safe workspaces. What is really concerning is the high levels of workplace bullying and uncivilized behavior towards people. And leaders need to create a culture to be able, to bring the best, out of people. And also as a leader, I need to position my people that they can get meaningfulness and purpose out of their work. But I think also many times you as a leader, especially if you are a middle level leader, can only do what the bigger, for example, organization allow you to do. And then that becomes tricky. For example, I think leadership for me, it's everything with talent management. That is really, it starts and ends with leadership. And we have seen it many times.
Now, Prof, you are seen as one of the experts worldwide in talent management as well as global remuneration. I mean, you get invited to the Netherlands yearly to go lecture there. My question is there any examples that you can share of companies or situations where effective talent management made a significant impact on the company as a whole?
Philip, I think, I can use, for example, Jack Welch from General Motors, as an example. And he started with the ABC of talent, and he was criticized quite a lot for that. That's that 70-20-10 principle, in terms of, I don't want to say classifying talent. But what he did is he inherited an organization that wasn't performing that well. And then all of you know the story of General Electric. But critically what he did, it was optimizing talent, within the workplace. And that's exactly what I was explaining previously, is that number one is, as a leader, you need to know your context, your organization. Number two, you need to know what you want out of the organization and also want out of your people. And you need to be able to map them with that. And for me, that is just a great success story. For example, in terms of really managing talent and positioning them in the end of the day. And General Electric was a great success story. I mean, and another thing also what Jack Welch did, what was me inspirational, is that he always appointed somebody that's younger than him as a mentor for him, like to stay up to date with what's going on. And that's also a mistake that we in many cases are making, is that we tend, for example, to become complacent and we do not keep up, with all the changes, what is happening, and that for me is really a success story, not only from a leadership perspective, but also how you can really change the organizational culture, making hard decisions, but also blended with the softer side of the people element.
Now, Prof, some of our listeners may not know this, but Prof is very creative. I've seen your office. I've seen some of you come to the office with cupcakes and stuff like that.
Oh, goodness.
So my next question is, let's say they have to make an award for talent management. What would the first place, second place, and third place award look like? And what do you think would be award ceremony? What would it look like?
For me, is that every person has a unique gift. And I believe that gift needs to be cultivated so that it's relevant, as a talent within the organization. But yes, you got the high flyers and so on. So I would make it fun, because an organization, should be fun. But okay, what I would like to do is that then the more formal side of thing, you would acknowledge people, of course, for their contributions and performance, and those are the things we already know. But then on the other side, we don't always know the other unique talents of people. I would, for example, ask somebody, but what are you good at? And then they can't tell me that. I said, but for example, some people are very good organizers or so on. Or somebody, for example, then I said, okay, you can, for example, organize events, for that matter or so on. Or somebody, for example, can be a singer. I said, okay, then sing for us. Those type of things, So yes, I think, it needs to be a blend of both, the serious things, like I said, I don't want to call it that serious, but also the fun stuff,
Now, my next question to Prof is, what's the most quirky way that you've seen a company reward an employee?
Would a boat trip be a quirky way?
Possibly.
So, yes, you know what? So I worked for an IT company, and they actually had, they call it the Excalibur Awards. But that was many, many years ago. So they had the whole, evaluation system. So, and then they selected the 50 top, employees, and they went on a boat trip, which I think was really very nice. I would have loved to go on a boat trip, so that was actually a really good example.
I know Toyota South Africa, I don't know if they still do it, but in the 90s, they rewarded the top salesman of all the branches in South Africa with exactly that, a boat trip.
Yeah.
So I actually think it would be nice. Okay, now the very last question, Prof, and luckily this isn't a difficult one. If Prof could have a conversation with a historical figure and give them talent management advice, any person, alive or dead, who would it be, and what advice would Prof give them?
So the person, that I would like to have a conversation with is my late granddad on my mother's side. I'd never had the opportunity to meet him. He passed on when I was 1 year old. But up until this day, his legacy is still that he was a wise man and he was a man of God. And those are critical characteristics. And I would actually go to him and would ask him, what, based on your wisdom and also your religious foundations, what would be the advice that you will be giving us? Instead of me telling you, what talent should be. So that would be interesting. And then what would be nice is having that reciprocal conversation and get from that wisdom, because those characteristics are really things that matter to me.
Thank you very much for Prof's time. I know Prof had to move a few things to be here. I appreciate it a lot, and I hope that we have a conversation like this soon when we do our next recording sessions.
No,
If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe, share this with friends and family, and leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you.
Thinkers and sit down.